Welcome to the Tales from Wales podcast, live with Joke Pit connecting comment today in a very, very fetching retro t-shirt. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, yeah, very good. Sporting I think I've got as much hair on my chin as I do my head, so that is the first for everything. I see that you're sporting a nice haircut.
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah, that'll be all right. That'll be all right. I'd be like one of those little Mexican werewolf kids.
It's good to have a dream. It's very nice to see you, Steph, because I've been seeing Drew.
Yeah.
It's nice to see Drew as well, but I'm seeing him every Thursday. I haven't seen you since the start of lockdown. How's it going? How are you?
Well, you're not missing much, mate. I'm still a multiple letter words. Nice to catch up on your vlogs and stuff. I haven't watched them all because you've done like a million of them, but I've watched a few, and I've enjoyed them. I like that. Is that like a throw or like a wall carpet behind you?
It's like a sort of wall hanging thing. I think it's from, like, I should know because every time I do a stream, people ask, and I think one of my fiance's relatives gave it to her as like a present. So it was here before I moved in. And I don't know where it's from. I think it was like a souvenir from a holiday, maybe. But then that might not even be. I should know. I should have. That's people always ask, and I never know. It'd be so easy to check. I would just have to ask the person I live with all of the time.
But I think it's nice now that it's gone too far. You have gone past that threshold of you can't ask Ellie what it is. That would be disingenuous of you. So I think you should make up a different story every time someone does ask.
Oh yeah, this was actually it's a nice story actually. This was actually the blanket that I was found in after I crashed to Earth in a little escape pod as a baby. And the escape pod was, left in ruins, but they brought the blanket and the little T-shirt that I was wearing that said Kal-El, and never really thought much about it. But I suppose one day I should wonder about what that means.
Well, I think we've gone into this and we started with the niceties. It's nice of you to ask sort of us how we've been, Chris, because guests don't often give us that sort of luxury. Really, it's nice of you to do that. But you haven't introduced yourself yet. Obviously, we're live now with Joke Pit visually and audio. This goes out on audio across all podcast platforms as well. So for anyone listening, we sort of just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about who you are.
Hello, I am Chris Chopping, stand-up comedian, occasional writer, and I suppose these days YouTuber as much as anything since the great global situation occurred. So I've been doing stuff on YouTube. I like wrestling. I like cats. I like food. Those are the main driving forces in my life. What more do people need to know?
Well, yeah, I think not to
what about wrestling cats?
Oh, mate, there is a video on the internet of two kittens fighting in a toy wrestling ring. I've wasted I could happily look at it for hours. It's fantastic. I was really and I got some kittens, and I have a toy wrestling ring, but the kittens were in Wales and the wrestling ring was in my parents' house in Bedfordshire, and I will never. It's one of the big regrets of my life, that missed opportunity.
Well, I'm sort of glad you said about your parents being in Bedfordshire. I always see you as a bit of like the unicorn of the Welsh comedy scene, in that you're a permanent fixture. Comedians obviously travel around the country. They're quite fluid sometimes. Some people will stay from home on different days and different bases. Like Raoul Coley, I'm sure you know Raoul, comic from Newcastle. He seems to be just constantly on the move, sort of doing his different gigs, and he seems quite fluid in where he is. But you're a permanent fixture here in Wales, but you're not Welsh. You're not a Welsh comedian.
No, not really. I sometimes get billed as that because I get booked to do a gig in England, and they find out where I'm coming from or who I'm coming with, and they make an assumption, and I find them on the Facebook page as cheeky Welsh comedian Chris Chopping, which feels like they're not going to get what they come to see really with that. It feels a bit like false advertising, but I I mean, my fiance is Welsh. I've lived here for well over a decade now, so I kind of think of myself as being at least sort of dual nationality. You know, like if I could apply for sort of dual citizenship. You know, I like being English in some ways, but I certainly can't do a particularly impressive Welsh accent. But yeah, I think that this is home now, really. So yeah, I like being in Wales. It's a good old place, isn't it? Plus, you don't feel like you're quite so under Boris's thumb. Which is nice.
It is that.
Yeah.
A little sort of devolution. There's a little devolution goes a long way. I think is a saying we can coin. But I always make a mistake of thinking you studied here in Wales, but that's not true either. What brought you to Wales originally?
A lot of people think I studied here. I think it's because I've always looked young for my age. So people meeting me in my 20s, and they realised I lived here for a couple of years. They assumed, well, you must have been or still be at university. But I actually studied in Northampton, one of the big three universities, isn't it? It's Oxford, Cambridge, Northampton. And a friend of mine was coming to Wales to do a master's, and I had no plans and am easily led. So I came to Wales, and we lived in a tiny flat for a year, and we didn't really know anyone. And we had I was working a minimum wage job in a bookshop. He was a student. We had no money. We stayed in this tiny flat. We got on each other's nerves for a year, and then he moved back home after his master's, and I got a job in a call center. And I don't know why I stuck it out, to be honest, but I think if I'd moved back to Bedfordshire, I wouldn't be doing comedy and things now, because there just isn't the scene and the kind of infrastructure for that. And even when I started in Cardiff, there was far fewer gigs and far fewer comedians than there are now. There was enough of a scene to kind of start out and find your feet and gig. But even then, to the point that my third gig was in like Weston-super-Mare or something, because there just wasn't. Now you can kind of stay in Wales and just gig around, and if you don't want to, you never have to kind of leave. But but that's why I ended up in Wales anyway.
I think it's sort of the cliched question, and I think comics in general get a little bit tired of this. But sort of, why did you and how did you first get into comedy? Because you've been doing it perhaps double the amount of time me and Steph have. I think approximately about 10 years. Is that right?
Yeah. Literally, I think the 10-year kind of anniversary of me starting comedy, I think, is coming up in October. Which at this rate, I don't know if there's gonna be any way of sort of marking that in terms of doing a gig or anything. But you told me how long I'd been going, and what was the question?
How did you start, and why did you start?
Well, it's one of those things that you always dream of doing when you're a kid, or when I was a teenager, I used to watch comedy on like Eddie Izzard and Ben Elton and things, but there wasn't much of it on TV. My exposure to it was through like videos and people doing like their tour shows. And so I thought to be a comedian, you had to do like an hour, like a block, and I didn't realize you could start out. And then I started when I moved to Wales, I started working behind the bar at the Glee Club, and I realized, these people kind of make a living from this, and they're doing 20-minute chunks, and they're not having to do a whole hour in one go. And then you learn about the scene, and you realize, you can start out, you learn by doing 5 minutes, and then you kind of build it up. So then it all starts to seem more possible. And I was one of those people that people always say, you're funny, you should do stand-up, you should do. And eventually, I was always very reluctant and didn't really have the confidence to do it. But it took one friend in particular, Nick Shepley, just sort of took me to a gig and kind of pushed me to do it and made it happen, really, and introduced me to a guy called Dan Thomas, who you both know, and he said, when can we get you in the diary? And I said, well, I don't know. I sort of came to watch, and maybe I'll give it some thought. And he went, no, we'll get you in. We'll give you a date, because otherwise you'll think about it and you'll put it off and you'll never do it. And he was right, and he got me in. And then I had, a panic for about a fortnight, and worked really hard, and did my first gig, and it all went okay, and it went from there.
So what was that sort of that 2-week period like with the panic? Because I was very, very nervous and anxious before my at least my first 4, 5, 6 gigs, and it did change. But how do you sort of manage that then? Because obviously there's this natural compulsion to run away, I suppose, and not do it.
I think, you know, my main tactic for managing that was to just be as prepared as possible in terms of really considering my material, like what, you know, and it isn't even material at that point, is it? It's kind of anecdotes that you've got, or kind of ideas for jokes, or kind of stories that you've told your mates you think might work on stage, because you don't really know how to write and craft material when you're starting out. So you're just going, what stories have I got? What can I talk about? Right, really thinking about and just going over them all, like going over them. Once I figured out what I was going to talk about, going over it in my head everywhere I went, doing it, because I was terrified I'd go on stage and sort of blank, you know, and not remember the stuff. So just go over the stuff, and just be super over prepared and anxious and anal about it. And I think that is the correct way to do it. Like sometimes you see people, like I see a lot of people having their first gigs. You know, we all see a lot of people starting out having their first few gigs, and sometimes they go well, and sometimes they go not so well, and sometimes, you know, people just need to learn, and sometimes some people just don't have an affinity for it, whatever it may be. And if people have a tough gig, I generally feel sorry for them, you know, and I feel a lot of sympathy for that. I can put myself in those shoes. But if I see someone where they go on and it's happened like only a handful of times where it's clear that they have not really prepped any material, they've just thought, I can just go on and can just riff it, and it's just like I don't have a lot of sympathy for that, because I got really nervous and I worked really hard and that paid off. And you, like, I don't know, I just think that's what you need to do, right? Just have a lot of stuff, just really plan and prepare.
Well, a compliment you may get as a comedian, you know, if anyone's listening who is a comedian or sort of got a sort of link to the comedy scene, like a compliment you might receive on times is, oh, that was a really tight set. That was really tight. And like tight is often not a good thing if someone's tight or what have you. But that's because what you did was succinct, and there was no wasted words. There was no dead air. It just, you know, you sort of got it out there, and you performed at a sort of a high level. And I think yeah, you can be too loose. And I think preparation and sort of being prepared and sort of stage ready with what you want to say and do, I think it is a massive sort of starting point, really. But like a game changer for me, or something I found was a big sort of turning point for me, was when I stopped writing things that I thought people might think is funny, and just wrote what I thought was funny and what I thought sounded like me saying it. Did you find that was, you said about trying to prepare material, is that something that came quite quickly to you, or did it take quite a lot of practice and self-reflection?
I think I was quite lucky in that I've always been, like, I think I was like, you know, kids at school who kind of are like class clowns.
Yeah.
And I was sort of a class clown, except that occasionally I would just die on my ass as a class clown. Like sometimes I would, you know, I feel like class clowns usually just say like sort of crash things, and it gets kind of a pretty consistent response. And I would say a lot of things that I thought were funny that would just fall very flat. But I would keep going for the sort of, you know, 30% of times that it got a good laugh, and I enjoyed that feeling so much. So I think by the time I started doing stand-up, even though I didn't really know how to write stand-up, I think I'd spent a more than average amount of time considering, you know, it's always something I've enjoyed is making people laugh. And, you know, not consciously, but I think I spent a more than average amount of time figuring out how to craft my sort of stories or anecdotes for kind of maximum impact, you know, and how do you tell this story so that someone that wasn't there gets it. And that's what you see a lot when people start out in stand-up. They're telling stories about their mates in the pub, or anecdotes they'll tell in the pub, and they forget that bit isn't going to work if you haven't explained to the audience who Daz is, because they know who Daz is, and all their mates know who Daz is, so they don't have to explain that bit of the story. And it's just remembering what you have to make clear for an audience to understand. So I think that side of things came quite naturally to me, because I'd always just been an attention seeker.
Yeah. Did you do that as well, Steph? Was you sort of like the class clown sort of archetype? Because I was as well, and what Chris was saying then is exactly how I used to behave when I was in sort of year 6 and that sort of thing in school, in primary school. Did you have this? Did you do the same thing, Steph?
I was similar. I was cheeky, but like I've always been very lucky where in my whole life where I can say pretty, like, I wouldn't say bad, but very controversial and got away with it. You know, I'll say something in school about one of the teachers, and I would get away with it. I don't know. I've got a certain way, a luck to get away with saying stuff to people, especially live audiences. I've got pretty horrendous things to people, and they've laughed. So yeah, I don't know whether or not it's my demeanor. Is it the fact I look a certain way or anything like that? But I've been very lucky. Very lucky. I got to do the class clown thing, and I got to get away with stuff as well, because I think I had worse people in the class than me, so I was okay.
I sort of, when I was in next year 6, I sort of, my attention went from making the class laugh. I realized my goal was to like make the teacher laugh instead, and that's what I would try and aim to do, because I knew then that if like the teacher was laughing, I had that sort of safety net of, well, you might not like what I said, but you laughed at it, so there's no sort of comeback then for me. And I think the way I approach comedy is sort of the classmates are the comedians, and the teacher was the audience. You know, you don't necessarily want the comedians laughing at the back. You want the audience laughing. You know, sort of that target sort of laughing. How do you sort of approach like a gig like that? How you view the audience and the comedians?
Well, you've reminded me actually, Drew, of this is a bit of a tangent, but you've reminded me of when I was at university. You talking about trying to make the teachers laugh, and then they can't really tell you off. It reminded me when I was at uni, falling asleep in a seminar, and
oh, that's a risky move in a seminar. Lecture theatre, you can get away with it, but seminars, pretty. You must have been tired.
There's about 16 of you, and
yeah.
No, but the lecturer took a risk of his own, though. He took a gamble, because he did that teacher tactic that we all know of when they know you're distracted, they know you've not been listening, of asking you a question to catch you out. And so I'm literally asleep in this seminar, and I wake up with a start, and he's looking right at me, and he asks me a question about what he's just been talking about, and I just hit so lucky with having read the text the previous evening and knew the answer to the question. I was like, aha, is this? And he didn't do anything. He was like, oh, well, I played my card, didn't I? I asked my question to catch him out. He wasn't caught out. He clearly needs the sleep more than my knowledge. And
was it the reading of the book that made you so tired?
No, let's not pretend it was staying up late.
I visited Northampton because before I was a comedian, I was going to join the police. I was accepted into, I think it's Northamptonshire Police Force. I was waiting to start, but then it never happened because the Conservative government came along and cut funding or something along those lines. So it never happened. But Northampton seemed like sort of a town as opposed to like a city sort of place. Is it much a university town?
Well, it's hard. It's like having not been to university in other towns. It's hard to kind of know, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's 2 campuses, and they've got like when I lived in halls of residence my first year, and I don't know if you guys have ever lived in halls of residence.
Yeah.
It's just constant drama because it's people who don't really. They're still learning how to be grown-ups, and they're out, and there aren't any adults to supervise or kind of intervene, and so it's just people arguing and rowing and falling out, and you know, and that was fun for a year. And then I moved out into like a shared house, and everyone I knew in halls were going, "Oh no, it's so great in halls, you got to move back." And I'm like, "No, I know what it's like in halls. It's horrible, it's grim." But living in the town in Northampton, I remember there was a big street. You go out into town for drinking, and then to get home, we had to walk down this big, I can't remember the name of the road, but it was a massive long road where the whole place, it's one of those classic streets where the whole place is just kebab shops and pizza places and chicken places. And you're like, which was the last of these to open? How did they secure the funding? what was the business plan that they took to the bank, going, yeah, I think what this street needs is another chicken shop. I'm aware it's probably money laundering, but you've surely got to go and secure the loan to kind of create the acceptable front of the business, right? Like, I don't know how they would do that. And I used to go in drunk and just like spill all my change out onto the bar and just be like, I'll have that much chicken, like 1 chips and however much chicken that buys me, and then wake up in the morning with a lap full of cold chicken that needed to be thrown away.
Well, there's my cousin.
You never ate it.
Well, I would eat the first 2 or 3 bits, but I bought like 8 or 9 bits, and then rather than putting them in the fridge or doing anything sensible, I'd drunkenly kind of stumble off to bed and just wake up and oh no, I could have, if I put that in the fridge, that could have been lunch, but no, I fucked it again.
Well, when I lived in Porth,
it should have been breakfast. I should do that with Chinese.
Yeah.
I live pretty close to my cousin, and one of her friends, he's always running around Porth, like bumping with the dog. And he said when he was at university, he once came home and had a lovely bacon sandwich after a night out, which is always a treat, you know. It was a bit of a risky move. I'm not a fan of starting up flames and stuff when I've had a drink, but I prefer a takeaway option. But he had a lovely bacon sandwich, only to find the next morning that the frying pan was completely clean. He hadn't actually used it at all to make this bacon sandwich. So he's always very, very cautious now. And he's always double checks that he's got some dirty frying pans or saucepans the next morning, making sure there's evidence that he's cooked it properly. So, yeah, I felt about that story. It put me off a little bit. I think takeaway is the best option to go. Have you got a bit of a go-to after night out meal at the takeaway, Chris?
Well, it always used to be Southern fried chicken was my go-to. I'm living in Newport now, and it's kind of tends to be we don't really live where there's any takeaways that are open late night, so it tends to be more a case of get home and what can I kind of put together quickly and easily at home that isn't going to burn down the house or kill me. Yeah. So, but yeah, it always used to be Southern fried chicken was always my thing. Like one portion of chips, loads of chicken, maybe a coleslaw. Pizza's good too. If you never get a lamb shawarma, those I would recommend. They're kind of tricky to track down. Do you know lamb shawarma?
Yes.
What's that, kebab, is it? Or?
So it's when you go to the kebab shop and you've got the doner kebab on the pole. Obviously you know that, but I'll describe this. And it's like the big sort of mass of processed meat, and you're not really sure
elephant's leg.
Yeah. And then you have the chicken kebab next to it, which is supposed to be like the chicken equivalent, except that it isn't one sort of homogenous kind of lump of meat. It's all these little kind of juicy bits that they somehow kind of stuck together, and then it comes out in little juicy, crispy bits of chicken, and that's like shawarma. So lamb shawarma is like little juicy, crispy bits of lamb that are all on this rotating thing, but it's not like the doner kind of slices. It's little crispy juice. Oh, it's beautiful, but can
not really nice. It's really nice.
Not as nice. I like a lamb sheesh. That's always nice, but it's not always available. So doner sometimes have to be the go-to with them. But something regarding like sort of fried chicken and late night fried chicken escapades. KFC, sort of, you know, the brand of chicken that's sort of most famous, shuts quite early, doesn't it? Shuts like sort of 9-10 o'clock. So you have to sort of find these sort of off-market or off-brand sort of versions. Then, have you got any sort of go-to off-market chicken shops you like, especially in Cardiff? It's quite a good choice in Cardiff.
There used to be one called like funkychicken.com or something, and they used to have like just really padded, sparkly leather padded seats, which I think I enjoyed the aesthetic more than the chicken. But yeah,
it's still there.
There's funkychicken.com, and then there's another one called chicken.com, like just because they thought websites were cool, I think. I'm pretty sure there's one that was like chicken.com, and then you look it up and that wasn't even their website. They just thought it was a good name for a chicken shop. No.
Tell us, Steph.
Maybe it was a typo, but and like it's so like for like 10 minutes from me. There are so many like different sort of takeaways and stuff, and I've got to stay away from them. I think I've had 1 or 2 kebabs in the last 4 months. Everything food I've cooked myself. Like I like watching, like, well, I used to go on Chris's Instagram and see what sort of stuff you'd be cooking, because you'd always do that bang bang stuff, and I've never seen anyone use polenta so successfully as you, Chris. Drew, do you eat much polenta?
I'm full disclosure, I don't know what polenta is.
I only discovered polenta like
Chris, tell us what polenta is.
I only really discovered polenta like about a year ago, and it's corn flour.
Okay.
And you can use it to make like a mash kind of substitute, where you just kind of put water in and you stir it for ages, and they can add like cheese to that and things, and use it instead of how you would use mash, have it with sausages or whatever. But what I really like to do with it is, like, you can put it in a dish and like let it set and cool. Like, you mix it with water, let it set, and then you can like chop it into cubes, whack those on skewers, and you can drizzle all sorts of like oil onto them, and they take the flavor really well. And then you cook them, and they're like crispy on the outside and soft in the middle, and they've got the flavor of whatever oil you've put on, or like garlic or whatever it might, or herbs, whatever. And it's really nice. Yeah, I would recommend it. It takes a little bit of prep, but it's worth it. It's really nice.
So it's sort of an alternative to potato, and it can be sort of malleable into like a mash or a fritter or something like that, is it?
Yeah. It's like the equivalent of, I guess, of like the mash on the one hand,
Like chips.
The chips or the roasties or whatever. But yeah, it's well, I'm an omnivore. I will eat whatever you put in front of me, pretty much. But my fiance is vegan, so that's pushed me to kind of experiment a bit more in the kitchen and try some different things, and that's been quite fun. And a lot of people think vegan food has to be healthy, but it doesn't have to be, guys. It can be just as deadly as meat.
So how do you sort of manage that then? Because obviously, guys, like, two of you live together, plus the cats. There's obviously shopping budgets to manage, and so much hours in the day of cooking and that sort of thing. How do you sort of manage that between you then? If she's strictly vegan and you were not, how does that sort of typically work out each week?
I tend to do most of the cooking, so it kind of falls to me on how much effort I want to put in on any given evening. Do I want to make a separate things, or do I want to make something that can kind of, sometimes you can do a dish where most of it's done, and just the thing that you have on the side, I'll have a meaty thing and she'll have some vegan sausages or whatever. Sometimes I'll just go, no, I'll just have a vegan curry tonight, and that's the curry is the sauce is the thing, isn't it? So it's that's all right. And like, I think if I was just like, you can just go vegan and just go, right, I'm just going to have things off of trays in the oven and kind of meat substitutes, And I think I'd be comparing that with meat and be feeling a bit like cheated or hard done by, like I wasn't. But if you go for like polenta or some of the things you can do, like roasting chickpeas, or I'm not going to come up with the best examples right now, but there's so many nice vegan dishes you can do, where like the bang bang cauliflower is astoundingly beautiful dish with roasted cauliflower leaves and this beautiful kind of Chinesey sauce, where the meat doesn't have to be, you don't feel like you're missing out on meat because you're not having something that's a substitute for meat. You're just doing something with vegetables that are its own thing,
Yeah, because I find I'm probably wrong for doing this, but like, meat is sort of the cornerstone, or fish. Meat or fish is sort of the cornerstone of every meal that I make. Typically breakfast as well. And I think you get into a bit of a trap then, a bit of a vicious cycle, and you neglect the possibilities of eating non-meat and non-dairy based sort of meals, really. So, you're quite the social media chef, Chris, I find. I mean, I always take interest in sort of your things you're posting, so I find that quite, you open myself a bit more to vegan food, I think, on the option, the possibilities of vegan food.
Well, I've been a bit lazy about it in the last couple of weeks, because I've just been a bit like, I can't be bothered to cook, and just, so you'll notice, people who know me can tell how much effort I'm making in the kitchen as to whether or not there are photos going up, because if it's just a frozen pizza, then I'm not going to bother. It's not just did some McCain oven fries. I'm probably not going to take a photo of that. I did eat cat biscuits 2 weeks ago. Simon's.
Simon Manuel's outed you. He said Chris ate cat biscuits 2 weeks ago. If anyone tunes into Fours a Crowd, they would have seen that, perhaps. Were they vegan though, Chris? That's what we want to know.
No, I'm pretty sure they were supposed to have salmon in them, and
supposed to. So quite the hominids.
Well, I think they did. They had quite a nice. They had quite a nice salmon-y taste at first, and I was like, "Oh, these actually aren't bad," but it was the aftertaste that gets you. And they were really, really quite unpleasant. And they're all kind of like little crunchy bits that get in your teeth. It's not good. I did do this. This was for a bit on our panel show, Fours a Crowd. And I had quite the debate with Ellie because she was saying you could have just pretended to eat them, and I said no, I had to go method. Like it's because people can tell when you're pretending to do a thing. Like I'm not that good of an actor that I could pretend to do that, and people can tell if I'm really doing a thing or if it's, especially when it's something gross like that. Like just going It's like it's the idea of it, but it's the actually doing it that's funny. Sometimes you have to commit to the bit.
Well, I'm disappointed to hear that because I have written a part for you in a script of a cat biscuit eating man, and if if your acting is not really going to be, offer it to somebody else.
I'll just go completely method. I'll just eat the biscuits again. It's fine.
You might have to bring your own biscuits for
Dress up as a cat.
Production.
We've got loads of cat biscuits. That was the one thing before all this. When everyone was panic buying pasta and toilet roll, that was the one thing that I was worried about was pet food, right? Because me and Ellie will cope, we'll do something, but with the pets are really dependent on us. So I bought so much kind of cat food and dog food and treats and things. That was the and actually a lot of our cats are little us names and they don't deserve the treats. So I'll bring them along to the shoot. It's fine.
Everyone was digging towards the toilet roll and pasta. You were zagging towards the cat biscuits.
Yeah. The number of times I've had to wipe my bum on a cat biscuit.
That is accuracy at its finest. That is.
yeah.
Very impressive. Hey, do you know? Do the cats have individual or separate litter boxes?
Well, our cats.
Do they go and do their business separately?
They don't really have litter boxes anymore. They go outside into the wider world and sort of do their business out there for the most part.
Wow. That's impressive. I'll tell you a funny story about my Irish friend. My Irish friend, you boys at him. I won't say his name. His cat's litter tray is next. What's that?
I was asking if he has his own litter box.
Oh, sorry. No. Well, you'll find out in a minute. His litter box. Well, the cat's litter box is the toilet. And one night we'd had a few drinks, and he'd accidentally done a number 2 in the cat's litter box instead of the toilet. And and the litter box had a cab on it and a flap and everything. So I think your cats going outside are better than my human friend.
Yeah. Did you try and blame that on the? I think human poo generally smells.
I think.
Like I'm no fan of the smell of human poo.
I think you'd hope they was bigger as well.
Yeah, I think on balance, cat poo smells worse, which is the main reason to encourage your cats to go outside and poo, because the stink of it is.
Well, there's a scale, isn't there? There's a bit of a poo scale, and I think cat is at the worst end of the scale. You've got sort of harmless horse and cow at the one end, and then cat is pretty offensive, really. And it's not real. You think it might be something to do with the size of the animal as well, but there seems to be no correlation there. But yeah, cat is definitely in the red zone for me when it comes to different animals' deposits.
I think it's because they have like a largely meat-based diet with nothing else to kind of.
Yeah.
And we had one of our cats broke her leg, and we had to keep her in the same room for about 8 weeks, and she would do a poo and try and cover it up, and then she'd be trying to get out. She'd be distraught trying to get out of the room, like just trying to get away from the smell of her own poo. And you would take the poo out and you'd flush it down the toilet, but there'd be like a lingering. You try and open the window, but because she's not allowed out, you can't open the doors to kind of let her breeze it was just linger, and she'd be like desperately trying to get away, and it's like, yeah, but you did this. We flushed it for you, but you did this. Like, how do you think we feel? We're sat boxed in with you, this stink.
I think that's the difference between. I think that's where cats and dogs sort of differ. Like a dog would try and get out to go to the toilet, whereas the cat is happy to do it in your living room and then leave itself afterwards. Like, leave afterwards.
The thing. She didn't. She was very reluctant. She didn't poo for days at one, because she then normally do go outside. She was very reluctant to use a litter tray, and at one point I think she must have been about 70% poo, because it was so long since she'd been. Quite worrying.
But that's sort of like a sort of an enforced lockdown upon a cat that sort of we've all unfortunately had to deal with. But like we asked sort of Shani earlier, is there any sort of positives or different spins as lockdown brought about for you? Because it is crappy being stuck at home to a certain extent. But have we sort of tried to look on the bright side and take the positives out of it?
Oh yeah, massive positive. Well, the nice thing about not being a cat is when I was put in a lockdown, I was able to understand what was going on and why. Do you know what I mean? Like that. So,
well, just
but yeah. So to kind of have that direct comparison with an animal who's living in your house, or you're sticking in a room and you can't explain to them what it's about. It's just a luxury to know what's going on in the world. But yeah, I think it's been a long time now, this lockdown business, and I've been in furlough from my kind of part-time day job, and obviously comedy's just gone away, and so for the longest time, and so it's been a bit of a weird time and a bit of a roller coaster, and my productivity has been all over the place. But having said that, I have been really enjoying spending more time with Ellie, my fiance, than we normally get to, because we've just been trapped in this house together, and neither of us has the commitment now of going out to work, so we don't have as much money coming in, but we do get some quality time together. I've been making stuff for YouTube, teaching myself to do various kind of bits of editing and skills that I didn't have before, doing a vlog, and just trying to find other outlets for creativity that hopefully I'm going to kind of keep up even when gigs and things come back. So that's been really rewarding. Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to see like what goes back to normal, if that's the right word, and what sort of what new things stick around. Because we've been doing the podcast via these live streams, and it's in many ways it is nice seeing people in person, and I think you can have a bit more of a connection when you're recording live in person. But it's nice doing this as well. It's so convenient and easy. So
yeah, well, it was nice for me seeing. I was watching the Shani one earlier,
yeah,
and when that was going out live, and it was nice for me seeing Steffan and just going, yeah, he looks about as tired as I feel. That was encouraging, because he was very very tired.
I look like this all the time.
Well, because you guys, I don't know. I mean, Drew, you've obviously been working still. Steph, I don't know exactly what you've been up to in terms of work things, but like my general schedule is like right out the window, and like I say, we try to be productive and make things and do some things, but some days you just, and when you guys are like, oh, 10:30 Sunday, I was like, I'll go for the later one actually, please, because for me 10:30 is when I get up and I think about reading comic books, and then reading comic books seems like, well, maybe that's a bit much. I'll start with some YouTube, like that's where I've regressed to at this point. Like I can't even face a comic book in the morning, because that seems like too much effort to read a book for pleasure. So I just have to watch some YouTube while my mind gears up again. So I do worry about like just having to go back to normality and commute and do all these things. Like hopefully, like they say it's happening in people who work in offices maybe will be working from home more, and they'll waste less of their lives like commuting, and then it'd be more productive for everyone and things can get done. And maybe those of us who are in kind of creative fields in some ways will find creative ways around having to do quite so much travel or other ways of doing things, or other outlets and things as well.
Yeah. Steph?
Yeah. I would say, like, I'm looking forward to sort of things getting sort of normal. I don't think they'll ever be normal again. What do you think of these drive-in gigs, Chopping? Have you seen them where people are like 50 feet away in their cars and stuff?
I haven't seen any footage of any. I struggle to kind of get my head around the idea of what that would be like and how much fun that would be to perform. You know, if people are enjoying doing them, that's great. But also then you look at the ones that are happening and you go, well, this is sort of Mark Watson and organising gigs with people with sort of telly profiles and stuff. I'm not sure that I need to worry about them really, to be honest, because if they've I don't think I'm going to be asked anytime soon, if you need a car to get to them, then I can't get to them anyway. So, but it's very weird and very different. I think something that I've noticed, like when it comes to comedy on the internet, I don't judge or criticize anyone for their approach to it, because a lot of people have lost a lot of their income very quickly, and everyone's kind of scrabbling how to figure out what they want to do. But so I'm not going to kind of be too specific about anything, but I think in a broader sense, sometimes I've seen people and it feels that like they are trying to cram stand-up comedy into the new medium and make that work. And what I enjoy seeing more, or would prefer to do myself, is where people go, okay, this is the new medium. What works in this? What can we do that fits this format, rather than trying to get a square peg into a round hole? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I think we talked about this earlier. You know, it is important to have that level of production value and perhaps editing and quality control of things you put out. But with the advent of YouTube and everyone's got a recording device in their pocket that they can use at any time, you know, it has opened things up that people can put content out there as much as they want. But like, as the vlog you've been doing through lockdown, have you found that helpful on, you know, a sort of a personal level, as opposed to an opportunity to put something out for others to enjoy? Have you found that beneficial to you?
Yeah, I mean, Ellie, my fiance, was kind of the driving force behind that in terms of getting it off the ground, suggesting that this is the thing we should do, and she still does like the bulk of the work in terms of like uploading and editing and well, not editing, because we don't really edit it, but you know, the admin around it and writing the blurb and things like that, and it's been really great because it's been a way for us to kind of spend some quality time together, apart from everything else, and keep us sane, to have a project to focus on every day, quite apart from whether or not anyone else gets anything out of it. I think it's been great for the two of us just to have something to focus on and do this little project, and we do it every day, and probably has kept us sane in a lot of ways, and have that kind of thing that we need to commit to, rather than just complete, because like both our jobs are kind of out the window right now. So something that is like a sense of, even if it is only self-enforced, like a bit of responsibility of like, we've got to do this today, rather than just completely allowing ourselves to drift into sort of doing nothing or whatever. And but then also it is nice when you don't get to go and do a gig and get laughs from an audience and all that. It is nice when people are positive about it and say nice things and say they've made it part of their routine or whatever. And then you have to think about, okay, well, what are we going to do if we do have to go back to work? Maybe we can't commit to doing something every day. You know, maybe the whole format of a lockdown blog doesn't make sense outside of lockdown. So what are we going to change it? What are we going to do and keep it going? And then also, could we started out with no kind of expectations of sort of viewership or making any money or doing it on any kind of professional thing? But then when people are enjoying it, and you think, well, maybe if these people are enjoying it, maybe other people would enjoy it. And you're kind of talking, wanting to go, all right, what can we do? How can we make this more professional? And how can we kind of push this a bit and try and get some more viewers and get some more likes and subscribes, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. And then, but the other thing is you kind of withdraw from that and feel a bit icky and be like, oh, I don't want people to think we're taking ourselves too seriously. It's just us chatting after all, you know,
But I think there's a merit, though, in being confident in in your material, if that's the right word, and things you put out. And, you know, even with this podcast, it's nice when we talked with this before we started as well. People will say, oh, I subscribe to your podcast, I listen to this, I enjoy it, you know. And I think sometimes we can be too harsh and too critical of ourselves. And I think sometimes you should maybe a bit freer with that, and don't be scared to put things out there, because chances are people will enjoy it. If they enjoy your stand-up, why wouldn't they enjoy your vlog, and vice versa?
Well, I think it's with a lot of podcasts I listen to. Some of them are funnier than others, but what I enjoy a lot of the time is that if you hear people chatting together who obviously have known each other a long time, and they've got that camaraderie, and you feel like you're being let in on it, and you can enjoy that kind of intimacy and camaraderie of the chat and the banter or whatever. So if other people can get a similar thing from us, then that's great. And it does kind of make you think, well, maybe if these people are enjoying it, maybe other people would enjoy it too. It's just sort of looking at YouTube numbers and going, well, we've got about 35 subscribers, and those people over there have got about 6 million. I'm not arrogant, man. I don't need 6 million subscribers in my life, but if I could kind of bridge the gap a little bit like that, I think that's true of everything in life. There seems to be. I don't want to sound like I'm being political or anything, but it feels like you look at how much money the really rich people have. Sometimes you look at your own overdraft, and you go, "Well, I don't need to be rich, but how do I?" It feels like I work quite hard. Where's the middle ground where I can have enough money to not be on my overdraft and be a bit more comfortable, and maybe the rich people don't need quite some. And I'm not kind of comparing successful YouTubers to kind of rich people hoarding all the money. They've worked hard and they've got that success, and they don't stop anyone subscribing to anyone else. But yeah, I think in a lot of places in life you can kind of go. Some people have really just stellar success or reward or whatever it might be, and other people working quite hard just kind of fail to kind of quite make the connection or find how to make that extra bit of money or that extra leap or whatever it might be. So yeah, it'd be nice to kind of go, right, how can we build this up a bit? And then also I'm thinking of putting out more sketches and video essays and doing other things with YouTube, because it's I'm kind of increasingly fascinated with it.
I think it's worth mentioning as well, sort of, you've mentioned Ellie, your fiance, a few times, and that's quite a new pronoun that's being applied to Ellie. And like Simon has commented that he said, I absolutely love Chris and Ellie's videos. I'm generally a regular watcher of them. I cried on the episode when he proposed. Now, Chris, I proposed to my wife 4.5 years ago, thereabouts. I must say, it's quite a ballsy sort of move. Could you sort of talk us through what happened and the sort of thought process behind that?
Well, I had all these plans in place that I was going to do this big kind of proposal and kind of plan a big kind of afternoon and kind of how it was going to go and what was going to happen, which I discussed all on the vlog of the details of it. But obviously lockdown happens and just all your plans for so many people in so many ways just go away, and that was one of them. And I really wanted to marry Ellie, and I wanted her to know that I wanted to marry her. And because that's the thing in a relationship, it's a weird thing when you're in a traditional heterosexual relationship. Obviously other options are available, but like you as the man, you're kind of expected to be the one that buys the ring and does the proposing, and there's that pressure. But I think the women are left going just not knowing, is he going to propose? Has he brought a ring? Is he thinking about it? And you kind of, so I didn't want her to be like left dangling either, so waiting for lockdown to end and be like, when can this happen? Months ago, because I had the ring and everything. So what can we do that still feels sort of a bit special or a bit nice?
Yeah.
On the vlog on her birthday, maybe that's an option. And it's really nice going, that's filmed, there's a record of that to keep. Irrespective of it being on the vlog that anyone else can see, it's nice for us to have. Yeah. Maybe show the kids or the grandkids one day, or look back when we're old and go, oh, weren't we young? And all that kind of stuff. It's I'm glad it exists as a thing to keep.
Well, there's a nice sort of little bit of positivity in amongst all this sort of difficult time that we're all facing. It was a really nice moment.
It was a really nice sort of personal, intimate moment between the two of us. But my PR team in the background is telling me it was like episode 87. If people want to check that out.
Yeah, I was checking out episode 87. Just fast forward to the best bit, maybe.
Ellie's lockdown vlog. Is that? Can they search that? Is that how they find it?
It was very touching.
Oh, Lockdown with Chris Chopping and Ellie Daniel. That's what you need to search for, or it's on my stand-up comedian.
Like, subscribe.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I watched that whole episode. I found it to be lovely, a very touching episode, and you know there is somebody for everyone, which is good to see. And Chris, I think you've done very well there. She's a nice girl, a good egg, and if she makes you happy, then that's the most important in the world.
I agree that I've done very well there. She does make me very happy, and yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased.
And Steph, you were good.
Yeah, you should be.
Commented, when are you going to propose to me on a vlog?
Yeah.
No, she hasn't really. I'm joking. That didn't happen.
Yeah. No. If my girlfriend now, she would say no, 100%, because we're just different like that. We don't believe in marriage and that kind of stuff. Because you know, if I marry her and she wants to get away from me, then you know she can't. She's got to have that option just to leg it at any time she wants.
It's nice.
I respect that.
It's nice that Steph has been showing his romance in his own way with his DIY and things, though. I heard about that earlier. That was lovely. I heard him when he was doing his Blade Runner impression. Like, I've seen things that you wouldn't believe. Starships exploding on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I've seen pubes in a kitchen. All these moments will disappear.
Blade Runner.
But based on the comments with the previous show as well, everyone was just focused on the kitchen pubes. It's nice that you know, you put these sort of things out and you try and create this sort of content, and it just goes back to sort of toilet humor and smut. Really, is what everyone really cares about the most. It's nice to listen to that.
I think there's a T-shirt in it.
Steph.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, you haven't seen anything until you've seen hang off a cobweb in the middle of a room. It is weird, but I digress. But yeah, I enjoyed watching your vlog. I particularly enjoyed the episode when Ellie gave you a certain makeover.
Oh,
I'll be honest with you. I've screenshotted that and kept it.
Did you screenshot the one from where I gave her a makeover as well?
Absolutely not. I'm a gentleman.
Right. Well, it's fair enough. I'm not into that though. No,
What'd you do?
I really liked the makeup and the wig look. I enjoyed that. I felt very pretty. Felt very happy. I'd do that more often if it wasn't so much.
I mean, I think I saw you in a totally different light.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised how well it suited me. I could look really good if I could be bothered.
Yeah. I mean, like if honestly, you know, if the you know, like you could go you could diversify now as a different act. You know, you could put a new character act in there, because we all know you've done character acts before. You've done Bret Michaels. Was it the pickup artist? Did Bret Michaels, your character, was any motivation taken from him when squiring a nice Ellie that you've got now?
I mean, if I had taken any motivation or inspiration from him, I don't think I'd now have a fiance.
Even the ankle weights.
Even the ankle weights are less impressive than you might imagine.
Have they come in handy during lockdown? All the ankle weights, doing a bit of home exercise.
Do you know what? One of the ankle weights sprung a leak, and all the little beads came out. So I've got one ankle that is incredibly strong, and one ankle that has become increasingly enfeebled. No, I haven't. I've done next to no exercise. I've put on about a stone during lockdown, and at the start of lockdown, I was reading lots of kind of things on Facebook about, hey, look, these are unusual times. Give yourself a break. Don't worry about, you know, your weight. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And I was like, yeah, that's the way to go. And then about 4 months later, and you've put on a stone and got a belly that you didn't have and chins that you didn't have before, and you go, I've just got to go back out into the world and see people. I should have put some pressure on myself.
Yeah, I think when sort of things are fully lifted, we'd all have to go on a bit of a crash. I set a date and now a bit of a crash diet prior to venturing out of the house again. We mentioned sort of so streaming and online content and the ability to put yourself out there, which you didn't have maybe 10, 15 years ago in many respects. But a common thing that sort of comedies often like assimilated and with success is like being on television. And as the three of us know, there isn't a direct correlation between working on television or being a successful comedian. Not to say people on television aren't. I mean, there's comics up and down the country who are fantastic circuit comedians who don't do any TV work, and that's nothing to detract me from them. But like, you have done some stand up on television, but it's sort of surprisingly so for some people. Possibly you did it in Welsh language on S4C. Being non-Welsh, what was that like?
It was, I mean, I was like a novelty act in Welsh comedy. It was really fun. And I think because I'm English, I got a bit of a pass that a Welsh person wouldn't get, because my Welsh is terrible, which kind of became the joke, of me struggling to remember my lines and trying to, and botching things. And I think if I had been Welsh doing that, I think some Welsh speakers, not to kind of, Welsh speakers as a whole that I've met have been absolutely lovely people. I'm not wanting to paint them all with a negative brush, but I think some Welsh speakers, if I had been Welsh doing this act about how my Welsh isn't very good, would be a little bit so, well, you're Welsh, you should know the language. It's not funny that you don't know the language. You should butt your ideas up. But as an English person giving it, they were like, oh, bless him, he's giving it a go. And I had a bit of leeway to kind of mess around with it a bit, and that was really fun. But a lot of and actually, I should say, Steffan Evans helped me with some of the sort of translating and pronunciation and working on my bits for that as well, which I'm very grateful for. And it was great because I got to do that TV show.
Go for pint.
Yeah, and I got to do that TV show, and Steph was on it, and people that I'd started out, like Dan Thomas was on there, who given me my first ever gig, and Phil Cooper, and and Steffan Allen, who are two of my dearest friends inside or outside of comedy. So it was really great, like, to make a TV debut. Like, it wasn't, it's on S4C. It wasn't sort of seen by a massive audience. It didn't launch me to success or anything. But to make your TV debut with those people that you love was like a real treat, and to always have that.
Steph?
And you went down so well. You went down. People absolutely loved you. I mean, we were around touring West Wales as well, my sort of area, and they loved you there. I mean, I think you should never sell yourself short for exactly what you did there, because on the night of the filming, the audience absolutely loved what you did. Every single gig, they absolutely loved it. So I think that's an amazing thing, really. And what's most of is you've really seen the two sides of comedy in Wales. I think especially, you're good friends with Steffan Allen, who is, one of the forerunners in Welsh comedy. And I know having that sort of understanding of two sides, I think it's a very useful thing going. Do you think so?
Yeah, I do. I think, you do have a better just understanding for all. The more you see of that, and you see the English, and you see how it operates differently and what things are the same, it's just always good. I always think, like, it's good to just travel, or even within English language comedy, you travel around, you do gigs in London, and you do gigs in Manchester, and you do gigs in Exeter or wherever it might be, and Birmingham, and you meet different acts with different philosophies, and different scenes have got different kind of approaches or kind of received wisdom that's kind of built up. And just sticking in your own scene, you don't learn about that, and you don't expand kind of your knowledge or your ideas about comedy so much. So I think it's important to travel. So if you can then do that and expand into a different language and find out what that scene thinks and whatever, that's really interesting as well, and you learn a lot. But I think what has happened as well since I did those gigs, it was great being able to do those gigs, but since then the Welsh language scene, it was a small scene at the time. It was, a lot of talent within that small pool of people who were doing it, but it's kind of exploded since then, and I mean, they certainly don't need me to be doing it anymore, because they've got to round out any numbers on any TV shows, because they've got so many talented Welsh language acts now. And obviously a lot of that I only know because I've also seen them performing in English, because I do not understand the Welsh well enough to follow, unfortunately, a lot of the time. But yeah.
But I think it's nice that you're prepared to say that and prepared to admit that, rather than try and gloss over it and sort of, make it out being anything it's not. And I think that sometimes, like you said, people buy into that and they appreciate you offering up this vulnerability and an acceptance that your Welsh language sort of strengths aren't there, and that's fine. You're trying.
Well, I've always wanted to kind of, get better at Welsh. Like it's still one of those things. You think, well, one day I'll get to the point that I'm kind of fluent and stuff. But it's the same as anything, like learning bass guitar or kind of, reading Ulysses, whatever it might be. There's always things that you do have the best of intentions, and then actually kind of getting the work done is hard, especially when you've got other commitments and things as well. But maybe one day I'll at least be able to sit in the audience and kind of understand what's going on a bit better.
Yeah, rather than just laugh in the pauses like I tend to do.
I went to see Ellis James recording a special for S4C. And he was doing an hour special, and I was enjoying it. Like, I couldn't really understand like the jokes, but I was kind of enjoying kind of seeing what words I could spot and if I could follow the gist of kind of what the routines were about, from what words I understood and what his body language was doing and things. And then he started doing a bit about a Welsh theme park with like a wooden roller coaster. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, this is really clicking for me now. I'm this Welsh. I've been sitting here watching it, focusing, and it's really starting to click, and I'm really getting it. And then I realized he'd switched to English.
You thought you just.
It just shows you put the work in and it's paying off. I can really get this now. And no, he's just talking in English, which is a language that I should not pat myself on the back for understanding, really.
Well, Chris, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us and giving up your time. We always appreciate all and any guests. Is there any way you want to direct anyone to where they can catch up on what you're doing or what you will be doing?
Well, I've got a Facebook page, Chris Chopping Stand-Up Comedian, so go and like that, and I put links to all my stuff. And as I was saying earlier, the Lockdown with Chris Chopping and Ellie Daniel, look that up on YouTube. Like, subscribe. There's no shame in it. Tell your friends. Be great.
Chris, thank you very much. Steph, thank you, and anyone who's been watching or listening at all. Master Testing with the podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.